Welcome to the show, Suz. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you on the show today. You and your brand and your vibrancy bring a pop of color into my life every single day when I'm scrolling on socials.
Well, I have to say yours is pretty much up there with me. So I feel like there's definitely an alignment of brightness and boldness and amazingness.
Definitely, definitely. And I've got the pink lipstick and pink nails to make sure I'm authentically on brand today.
So good.
So, Suz, I wanted to bring you on the podcast because I do want to talk all things authenticity as part of personal branding. And I couldn't think of anyone better than yourself to jump on and talk that through, because watching your brand grow more and more, even through the COVID lockdowns and the stuff that you shared from an authenticity perspective, I really want to deep dive into that. But before we do, how did you become a branding coach, and how have you developed your personal brand to get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my life in recruitment and sales. And through that journey, I ended up in employer branding, which is all about how organizations attract people to them and how leaders show up authentically to attract top talent, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I started. And then I moved into more consulting, where I built a branding agency around employer branding. So we were working with really big companies to sort of build their websites, develop their messaging, do all their videography, photography, and bring the strategy together so that it created obviously a brand that stood out in the market. And then I ended up working with a lot of leadership teams around their own personal brand, their messaging, their thought leadership, so that they could once again stand out, but attract people who had that values alignment, wanted to work for an organization where leaders kind of stood out. And so that's where I started with all of that. And then because I built that brand agency from scratch, which was doing all the pricing and packaging and the marketing and the services and the selling and all the rest of it, I had girlfriends that had left corporate or they were on maternity leave and they wanted to start their own businesses. And so I just kind of over wine and, dining room tables.
All the best things are over wine, right?
So over wine and dining room tables, I just kind of helped them map it out. And as I sort of went through that process, I was just like, this is so fun. Like, I really love this. And it was something that came quite naturally to me as well. And so that's how I then started my side hustle, which was my business. And so for quite a long time, I had my running the corporate branding agency and then working with women in business to help them develop profitable businesses, but build really bold and strong brands as well. And then eventually left corporate and have been doing this ever since.
Went into that. And where did your personal brand come from? Like, it's always got a story around why we've got the colors that we do or with the vibe that we've got. Yours is so eclectically bright and fun. I love it. Where did that come from? Have you always been bright, bold, colorful, or is it you've unleashed yourself as the brand has grown?
No, I feel like I've always been like that. Like, I remember I used to work for Deloitte Consulting in the UK, and I never wore a suit. Like, I was always the girl that was in the dress, or I had, the patent leather, the boots, or like fashion's always been something I've really loved. And so I feel like I've used it as part of, kind of bringing my personality to life as well. So I've always loved it. I am a little bit of a fashion obsessed girl as well, which is always fun. And so when I came into my own business, I just thought that's what, in order for me to be authentic, that's what I needed it to be. And so that's kind of where it came from, really.
I love that. And I have to say, when I suddenly decided, it wasn't sudden, actually, I say suddenly because it just happened, but to go me, no hair, nothing, and lean into me and how I was normally, that made a huge difference to leaning into like what makes you and what brings you joy. And you come out way more authentically in doing that, which I think has such a lot of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like when I started my business, it was called the Connection Exchange because I was looking for events and things like that. I couldn't find what I was looking for. And I just thought, what is it that I really want? Well, I want to come together and I want to connect with other people. I want to exchange knowledge, energy, fun, relationships. And so I started in events, and then I made the decision a couple of years later that I wanted to become a personal brand rather than a business brand. So that was a really conscious decision as well, where I was just like, you know, something, the products and services and the coaching that I'm doing, I don't want events to be the center of my business. I want my coaching to be the center of my business. And so in order for me to do that, really people are kind of buying me. They're buying my knowledge, my expertise, my thought leadership. And so I then shifted from the connectionexchange.com. We still trade as, but shifted from the connectionexchange.com to suzchadwick.com. And that was only because there is an opera singer in Canada who has suzannechadwick.com. So I had to go with Suz.
I searched for ages. You know, when you sort of, will my URL come up now? Will it come up now? Will it come up now? And whoever had it before, let it go. And I was there and I was ready to just, okay, I've got it now. A personal brand can be launched. Like, yeah, like you, it's a conscious decision to go. I went from the Daily Agency, which was my production company name, into RebeccaSaunders.com only a few years ago. And it is very conscious effort. It's very conscious in terms of even how I live my day-to-day life outside of the business as well. I don't know. I want to get your experience, you know, your point of view on this. I live and breathe my brand, right? Like I love the color. I love the color pink. I'm always wearing hot pink. I've just got a puppy. He's a little boy puppy, but he's got a pink lead. Everything's great. Like it's all just subtle tints of pink, which I think helps with my brand awareness as well. But in terms of taking that branding as far as I have, what are your thoughts on that for people to actually leverage into their personal brand completely?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of things is that, you know, when we talk about brand, then brand is the collective experiences that somebody has when they come in contact with you. So it's very much about the brand experience. It's about the visual brand. So the visual brand might be the first thing that kind of catches their attention where they're like, like she looks interesting or they look interesting. And then it's kind of all of the touch points after that, that really brings them into your realm and helps them to connect with you in a bigger way. I think for me, when it comes to my brand, it was really interesting. I am quite bold and bright. You know, even on the video here, like my office is like an art gallery, like that's kind of how I like it. But I also think that it's really important for you to take a look at how you're doing that across the board. So obviously we talk about socials, making sure that when somebody meets you as well, there is that alignment. Because sometimes we can be one thing online, if we're talking about authenticity, and then you meet somebody and you're like, that's not at all what I was expecting, or it doesn't really seem to fit. So I think that it's really important that whatever you are portraying online is authentic. It is really you. And if you are being authentic, then you never need to try. And so you'll never have that situation where somebody meets you and they feel like there's not an alignment there as well. So I think that that's just really important to really look at and say, am I being authentically me, or am I showing one thing online and then another thing when other people meet me? And so once you can really take a look at that, then I think that it's just making sure that everything then looks and feels the same. The emails you send out has the brand voice and personality you want, the visual looks the way that you want, you know, all of the products and services are consistent with how you show up too. And so I think that those, you know, that consistency across the board is really important. But as far as your personal brand goes as well, I think that it's really important that you share what you believe and what you think in a really bold way, because I think that that's what helps you stand out. And I think a lot of people struggle with that sometimes, is that, you know, when we think about what's my thought leadership, what is it that I believe? What do I think is maybe wrong with the industry? What are the myths, you know, the misconceptions that I can talk about? And that all becomes part of your brand and how people see you, how they experience you. And I think that that's what helps you to stick in their minds as well. But one other thing that I just did around what you were talking about with the visual bit is I call it brand jacking, which is
Yeah.
basically where I used to wear Gorman all the time. And so whenever somebody saw Gorman, they would think of me. Another thing that I have brand jacked is lychee martinis. So when anybody sees a lychee martini, I get a lot of people that send me photos. They're like, I'm in a restaurant and I saw a lychee martini and I ordered it, and they take a photo of themselves with it and they send it to me. So I think sometimes with your personal brand, you can have things that are identifiers and things that associate with you so that when somebody sees it, then they think of you as well.
Yeah, I love that. I've just started. I've got it on now. I've got a lot of Camillas. I do a similar thing where people are like, "Are you always wearing those dresses now?" Yeah, I am. They bring me joy, and now you remember me. Like that's, I can see. I've never thought of it as brand jacking before, though. I'm loving that. That's
Yeah, and
all those identifiers, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I think I saw you in your Camillas at the Business Chicks retreat on Necker.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, I see now that you said that to me. I'm like, I have seen that. I remember that.
I am that person. And, I've got a couple of friends that also have a lot, and we do a little bit of a share. So we're not always wearing the same stuff, and it just works.
Amazing. I love that.
So good. But okay, right. So we've got brand, we've got personal brand. We can lead into our vibe. When is it appropriate to share non-brand stuff as part of your brand? Right? Like in terms of that human side, lychee martinis, right? That's not a branding message of any kind, but it's something that you enjoy. I messaged you. I remember messaging you during COVID when you took a photo of you in a new pair of jeans. I don't know if you remember us talking about that. And you were like, you know what? I just felt really uncomfortable in the current jeans. So I bought the next size up and now everything's great. Like, and I was like, oh, I needed to hear that. I went out and bought new jeans. Like,
Yeah.
why am I sort of bullying myself?
Yes.
But was that necessarily a brand message? Possibly not. Like, where do you merge those two? I think there's no golden bullet, though. I'm going to caveat all of that. But where do you see that blend come?
One of my values is integrity. And I think that I am all about sharing the good with the bad. And so that does, because of the way in which I run my business and the things that I share, like I share when I've had a failure in business as well as when I've had a success, and I think that that is also reflective in my life. So I'm somebody that has struggled with my weight for a very long time. I've just hired a health coach and that's going well. But when I, was in lockdown and I wanted, I was uncomfortable. I just thought, why, like you said, why am I punishing myself?
Yeah.
Like, just go get the new jeans and feel good. And I think that when you can be really authentically you, where you share the good with the bad, because we are all over the highlight reel. We are all over like constantly feeling like everything's perfect and, everything's always great. And that's just not true. And one of the things that my clients say to me a lot is, one of the things I love about you is that you tell me the bad with the good.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to decide how you want to show up, because if you are going to be a leader in your industry, especially community leader, I think you've got to think about how you want your community to show up, how, you want them to feel when they're with you. And so I know that my clients struggle with a lot of different things in business and out of business. And so I think that as a leader of my community, it's really important for me to share both of those things as well. So for me, it's a values alignment to show the good with the bad.
And I call that just being human, right? Yeah. For me, in my world, when we're talking video, it's like, well, if you say an art, you're just being human, like we're all human. We don't need to be perfectionism anymore. Done is better than perfect. And no more so in the world where social media is just so all encompassing if you let it become that, right? With all these changes coming up with branding and reels and different content needing on different platform, it can become very overwhelming. So I think to just try and be somebody else at all times, as well as all that, will become too much. So being human and staying true to yourself, I think, is core.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just on the video thing, I think we live in a world of filters, and I am somebody where I have always gotten up in the morning, I put my makeup on, I have a shower, I put my makeup on, I get dressed. Like that's just part of my routine.
Yep.
But then there are other times where I've got top knot, I'm in my pajamas. I've got no makeup on.
With the dog.
And yeah, and I'll do I'll take a photo or I'll do a video and stuff. And so once again, I'm conscious that I want to show that to my audience as well. Like, I don't want you to be a perfectionist. I don't want you to feel like you have to always look what you think is the part in order to share your message, share your content, show up. And so if I believe that, I've got to do that. So I'm also really conscious of doing that.
Yeah, very much so. I love that. I think that's my biggest takeaway. It's actually on a post-it note in my desk in the office. You know, you've got to be the trailblazer and you've got to show up the way you want to see people show up as well, right? Particularly in the industries that you and I are in, we have to walk the walk and talk the talk. Otherwise, what we're teaching just falls down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talk a lot about not being a sheep, but being a Sean. So, you know, being Sean the sheep, doing something different, giving it your own way. Comparinitis has got to be a huge thing that you see come up a lot when it comes to building a personal brand and people looking for inspiration in places. How are you tackling or guiding your clients in tackling that comparinitis piece and that almost copycat method? How do you get them to be more Sean-like?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I say is, number one is being really aware of it. So it's always about being conscious of what we're doing. Like, if you're constantly consuming somebody and it makes you feel like rubbish, I think you've got to kind of go inwards and say, it's like I say to my daughter, I'm like, when you're with a friend and you leave them, do you feel amazing or do you not feel amazing? If you don't feel amazing, they're not somebody that should be in your world. If you feel amazing, then that's great. And I think it's the same, like when we've got these online people that we follow, think about, do they inspire you to step into your own power and do your thing, or do they make you feel not enough? And so the first thing is, how does it make me feel? Like, is this helping me or hindering me? And
unfollow.
Yeah, or mute, like mute, unfollow, whatever you want to do. Just really protect your headspace. I think as business owners, we all know, well, I think it's more known these days that your mindset is everything, because you can have all the skills, all the tactics, all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have the mindset to implement it and really, go for the things that you want, then all of the skills, tactics, and strategies and knowledge is not going to help you at all. So it's really important to protect your headspace. The other thing that I would say is that I'm a big Pinterest girl when it comes to inspiration. So for example, if I want to create a new brand or a new look or something, I'll go and I'll take a look and I'll be like, I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. And then I will show my designer, or I will take that information and go, okay, I love all of these things. What would it look like to me? Like, if I was going to be really different, but use this as inspiration, what would it look like? So it's acknowledging that that is inspirational, and now ask yourself, what's my version of it? If I was going to do something really different, what would I do with it? And so consciously focusing on you, your filter on the world, how you would make it different, how you would say it different. And I think that's something that's really important to do. So just being conscious and then consciously creating.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, consciously creating, I'm gonna stick on that one for a little second, because Canva is one of the best tools I think has ever come out, right? It's one of those amazing creative design tools. But you mentioned there that you've got a designer that takes those inspirations and makes them into something else. And that is a skill set in its own right. Yeah. Like, we can all sit on Canva and move stuff around, but it doesn't always look great, or it doesn't sit in a theme, or it's definitely, some of it's on brand, some of it's not. When it comes to doing those types of things and taking that inspiration, would you be recommending finding that designer that gets you your vibe and being able to work with that? Or, I can see a lot of business owners going down rabbit holes here in terms of sitting on Canva, creating stuff, wasting time, energy, whatever. But when did you bring a designer on with your brand, and how long have you been working with them in that fashion?
Yeah. So Eb was a client of mine, and I just really loved her Insta. I was just like, it's so my vibe. I love it. It's been great. And so I just started to get her to do little bits and pieces. And it's just grown from there. So the more that we've worked together, the more that she's kind of known me and my brand and what I really love. I mean, we still, get it wrong sometimes, but I'm just like, this is what I want. I'm not exactly sure exactly what I want it to look like. And she'll be like, okay, here's 3 options. What do you think? And we'll go from there. So I think just finding somebody whose work you love, so you know that the end product is kind of that big picture for you, like, oh my gosh, like I love that, looks amazing. And then for them to really learn you and your vibe and what you want. And I have to totally give Eb a big shout out. She's Eb Harper Design. And recently I said to her, can you update my logos for my courses? And so, I'd also sort of said to her, I can feel that I need to take my visual brand to the next level. I feel like I want it to be more grown up. I want it to be more sophisticated. I wanted to change my position in the market as well around my pricing and things like that. And so we were talking about my product or service logos, and she basically just went and did an entire update of my whole visual brand. And it was just amazing. Like, I didn't ask her to do that. I obviously paid her to do that, but I didn't ask her to do that. But she just intuitively knew that she needed to do that for me, which was just amazing. And I was just blown away by it. So I think that we've probably been working together, I want to say, for maybe 2 years now. Yeah. And I think if you can find a designer that just gets you and what you need, and can create things that you love, which she always does, then that's the best place to be. I am terrible. I am not a designer. Yeah. So I think it's about knowing your strengths as well and making sure that you lean into, like, I could spend hours faffing on Canva. Mm-hmm. And then I do that and then I look at it and it's still not what I want. So I've just learned now I would rather just pay for Eb to do it and do it well, and we can have a few iterations of it. But yeah, it always turns out much better that way.
I love that. And yeah, that story lights my soul on fire, right? It's that when I did a review of my support team, I wanted to feel like a VIP. I wanted to feel how I make my clients feel as a supplier. And I think going above and beyond to show you that that just sort of sums up the whole VIP feeling for me. You know, it's that, they really get me and they're invested in this as much as I am. You know, this is awesome. It's hard to build. So on that topic of team and brand voice, hard to build a team that gets your brand voice, right? When it is your voice that you're trying to get other people to design in or write in or any of that. Any top tips on navigating that? Like, do you have a brand voice guide that you work with? Or for me, I just talk and I am me, and then people gravitate towards it and I have no system. So
a few years ago, I had a copywriter that did my brand, like my tone of voice, or my brand guidelines, which was my brand personality, tone of voice, guidelines. It's what we are and what we're not, which I thought was really great. So, you know, we are bold, we are this, we are that. What we are not is like formal, structured, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's really important to not only know what you are, but it's really important to know what you're not. Because I think sometimes if you have a team, they can fall between the cracks of the knot, where they, you know, where they're trying to take what you've given them, and they might kind of not be right where you want them to be as far as whatever it is that they create, whether it's copy or visuals or, you know, but when you say we're definitely not this, then I think that gives them a stronger guide to play with what you are as well. So I think doing that work is really important. And I also think, you know, just you knowing what your tone of voice is and what your brand personality is. It's like, you know, we are right now that we've kind of shifted our visual brand, we are bright, we're colorful, but we're sophisticated. And we're more high end, we're more premium now. And so when I look at the image, when I look at the font, when I look at the, like how you put it together, that's what I want to feel like. I want to look at it and kind of be like, ooh, slick.
Yeah, no. That's for me in VIP, like, ooh, yep, front row seats. That's me. Like,
yeah.
So we've hit the nail on the head on all the things that a personal brand should be. Where do people go wrong? What are the 3 biggest things you see them fall over on every time?
Yeah. So not having unique thought leadership and a point of view. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like I might hear something and it just kind of feels like everybody else. There's nothing that is very you. So one of the things I talk about are the 7 elements of your thought leadership, like how to put that together. And one of them is your isms. So your isms are the things that you say. It's the language you use. When somebody hears it or they see it, they know that that's you. So big magic is a great one for Elizabeth Gilbert. Your why is Simon Sinek. When we talk about vulnerability, and creativity and stuff, then I always think of Brené Brown. So you've just got to think about, how do you own the language that you use, and how do you own specific, unique thought leadership? Yeah. So I talk about building a courageously bold brand. So when people think about bold branding, a lot of times they're like, that always reminds me of Suz. My first book was Play Big, Brand Bold. So really own something is the first thing. And I think that a lot of times people get lost in just and also just the general, like a kind of it's a bit meh. It just sounds like everybody else.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would say is have a unique look. So a lot of times when we fall into the comparisonitis, we're starting a business or whatever else, or we take inspiration from a lot of other people, that then puts us into the same category. So really take a look at your visual brand and say, is it unique? Is it something that that when people see it, it's very me as well? And so even a little bit with my fashion, like I've changed some of the brands that I wear. And I am a little bit, I'm going to tell you a secret, Rebecca, I'm a little bit cagey with it.
Ooh.
And I'll tell you why, because I don't want a whole lot of other people to go. One of the biggest questions I get all the time is, what brand is that?
Where did you get
where did you get that? And I do tell people, but I'm also like, really, like, I'm like, I really want to have like things that I've found that are really unique, that are kind of just me as well. So sorry to people who ask me where my brands come from. Just like, I just want them for me for a bit. Yeah.
I love that. I love that a lot. I wear a lot of jewelry pieces. So everyone says to me, where's this necklace from? Some German guy in a mountain somewhere. Like I just randomly found it. So I like to do my wardrobe with random finds that I couldn't tell you where I got it from, really, even if
anyway. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Yeah. And I think that the third thing when it comes to personal brands and what people are, I guess, getting wrong is really lean into whatever you love to do. Because so for you, it's video. For me, I'm all good with video. I love podcasting. Obviously, that's what we're on as well.
Yeah.
And as a speaker, that's like, I could talk underwater. Yeah. So I'm more than happy to talk. So really lean into, like, if you love to write, then write, because that's where people will engage with you. If you love video, do more video. If you love to speak, start a podcast and become a speaker. Like, really think about, where is it that I shine? Where is it that this is not work for me, but this is like where I light up and where I connect with my audience the most? So I think that if you can have your unique message, number one, have something that you own in the market, really work on it and think about how you can own like a saying or a phrase or just an element of whatever it is you talk about. Have a great look that, is uniquely you, that when people see it, they're like, I know that that's Rebecca. And the third thing is really, lean into where you shine. And if you can do those things, I think you become really magnetic. And I think that you become memorable as well, which is what great brand is. You are memorable.
And you've hit the nail on the head with all three there. And it's about being memorable and standing out. And as much as it is, it's almost being boring, right? I think when you're doing it yourself, it's like, oh, well, I just get to show up being me, and that's okay. Like, it almost becomes effortless, right? When you get it right and you are singing to your values and your, your personality and your authenticity, it's just effortless, and it's pretty straightforward and breezy easy. Suz, you've given us some incredible tips on today's show. And I know, because you alluded to it earlier, and I follow you a lot, you've got a number of programs that people can come and join and learn how to do this themselves and learn from yourself as a master of this craft. Where can people find more about you and your work?
Thank you. So you can find me at suzchadwick.com, which is my website where I teach people how to build profitable personal brands and get paid for what you think instead of what you do, is my Amplify Mastermind. So that's suzchadwick.com/amplify. And that's like a full year program. So I would say that's probably the best place to go to learn more about what we talked about today.
Amazing. And I'm going to put all of those links into the show notes. Suz, thank you so much for brightening my day and our listeners' ears today. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me. Such a great conversation.